Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beats Audio Installation, and today we're doing a radio replacement in this 2003 Subaru Impreza. Now in this install, we're going to go ahead and show you how to remove this factory radio and reinstall a double DIN Pioneer Bluetooth Apple CarPlay radio in its place. Now our goal in this install is to retain both the AUX and USB in the center console, as well as the volume controls, track up, track down, mode, voice recognition, and phone buttons on the steering wheel. Let's get started. Now the first thing that we need to do to get this radio out is remove this bezel up and around. Go ahead and get your fingers up underneath that just to get it free. And like I said, you could use a panel or you can use your fingers just to get up underneath there. Just go ahead and pop it all loose. Okay, so at this point we have it just nice and loose, and that's where we can go at this point, just because these temperature control and vent selector switches here are actually driven by cables, and we have to release the cables up underneath the dash in order to give us enough length to tip this dash bezel down to get the radio out. So one side of it is underneath the passenger glove box here, and we have to drop down the glove box. The other side is actually by the brake pedal on the driver's side. So we'll go ahead and show you, let's grab the camera and go up underneath to show you how to disconnect those to give us the length we need to get this out of the way. Okay, so we need to pop out this glove box here. So we can do that by just pushing it down. The first thing we need to do is go ahead and release the actuator here on the right hand side. Just push it up and out of the way, and then push your sides in so the glove box comes down, and then you can just pull and that should come right on out. Alright, so right ahead of us there is our selector for our temperature. So if I rotate that up here up top, that rotates that down here below. So we need to actually pop that on off. Alright, so once that's out of the way, we gotta pull it out of this holder here. So this cable now is nice and free, and we're gonna do the same to the other side. Alright, we're here on the driver's side here, and essentially it's the same thing. It's a lot harder to show you from this angle just because of the knee buster underneath the steering wheel. But we're gonna do the same thing by removing the cable off that pivoting arm, and then also removing the retainer shielding from that clip up there, just so we have the length we need to get the dash bezel off. Okay, so now as you can see, we have a ton more play here. Since we get this out just a little bit further, there's going to be a harness that's plugged into your hazard switch. Go ahead and disconnect that. Okay, now that is going to allow us enough length here just to pull it down out. Now you can disconnect these cables from the actual HVAC switches, or you can just leave this as is. It is a little bit annoying because it's in the way. That's okay. I think you have enough space to get up and around it. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 screws that you'll see. We just have a Phillips here to remove those. Alright, so with those 4 removed, at this point make sure your CDs are removed. But you can start now giving this a tug. Just like so. Now here on the back, you're going to have a couple of things to disconnect. You got your antenna, you got your secondary ground here. Alright, there we go. Okay, so at this point, let's head to the bench and start assembling our radio as well as our wiring harness, and then we will return here and get it all installed. Alright, so for our Impreza, the parts that we're going to need to replace this radio, first of all, we went with this Pioneer AVH 1400 NEX. This is an Apple CarPlay eligible radio, which is pretty cool. In order to accommodate that radio, we need a double DIN dash kit. This dash kit's by Metra. It's the 95-8905B. This is our wiring harness that goes with our chosen radio. Now, since we have steering wheel volume controls and track controls and source and voice recognition, everything like that, we need to retain that, and we're using the iDatalink Maestro steering wheel control kit. I'll throw the part number in the description for this as well, but this allows us to pre-program this module to retain those factory functions, which is really, really nice. The wiring harness adapter we're going to need is this Metra 70-7552. Now, this shows it goes for Nissan, but Subaru has used the Nissan plug for quite some time, at least within this Impreza, and so we're going to need this wiring harness adapter as well. And then finally, since we are using a Pioneer, we're going to go with this micro bypass. Allows us to access certain settings while in motion, such as your Bluetooth settings or other functions as well, which is kind of nice. If you have the AUX and USB in the center console and want to retain those, we're also doing this iDatalink Maestro USU1 harness retention kit. It allows you to retain the functionality of both the USB and the AUX and integrate them with your chosen aftermarket radio. So at this point, what we're going to do is wire up our harness with our Pioneer with the adapter from Metra, and we're also going to integrate the power and ground for our steering wheel controls and the micro bypass. So we're going to get everything all soldered up here and get this prepped for the car. Okay, so we went ahead and soldered everything together, color for color. A couple of additional notes as we soldered this up. We needed to tie in our power and ground for steering wheel control because this requires power to function properly. So we tied that into our power. As you can see, we just kind of twisted them together before we soldered it. Same thing with the ground, so that again provides power and ground to the steering wheel control module. Since we're doing a Pioneer bypass, because this is a Pioneer, we also tied the Pioneer's ground into the ground, as well as the remote turn on to the remote turn on. So we just added that in. We also added an extra remote turn on off there, just so we, if we had an amplifier down the road, it's easy to get to, it's ready to go. And then finally, we added also an extra power accessory off this, because we may be running a backup camera on this, and this may be an easy way for us to connect into accessory power for that backup camera down the road. So that's everything all hooked up here. At this point, we're going to move our heat shrink up and over our connections, just like so, and then we're going to use a heat gun and shrink all the tubes down. So let's do it. Okay, so with our harness nice and cool, we're going to use some Tessa tape and wrap and protect our wires as we prep this to be installed in the dash. Now, the ends that we haven't connected yet, we just threw a buck connector on. Amp turn on wire down the road, we threw a buck connector so it's easy to get to, as well as accessory, and then our backup camera wire. Other than that, we're all good to go to begin taping up this harness. Now, one note for wiring for steering wheel controls: this iDatalink Maestro requires 3 wires to be connected, and our harness does not supply those wires. There's no wires on this end. So we'll actually have to tap into behind the factory harness into the wire specifically in order to connect these 3 wires that are required. Okay, so we got it all taped up and ready to go. We have our reverse trigger wire for our Pioneer. We left that out because we're going to do a backup camera later on, so that'll be easy to tap into. We have an accessory wire in case we want to power a backup camera or some other accessory, just ready to go. We also have an amplifier turn on wire. We just put a buck connector and zip tied that in so it's not flopping around. This end's all ready to go. This is our first steering wheel controls. Again, we only needed 3 wires out of the whole bunch. The wires that we need for our install today are violet red, black white, and pink red. And then obviously power and ground, which you saw us wire up already. Those are the only 3. So all other wires in this whole bundle we just taped off. Didn't need them. So this kit is all ready to go. This is not an aux. Be careful, because you don't want to confuse that with an aux jack. It actually goes into the WR input on the back of the Pioneer, and that will allow us to integrate our steering wheel controls into our new radio. So at this point, we have our wiring harness all assembled, let's go ahead and get the dash kit on the radio. Okay, so this is a simple dash kit. It basically hooks in on both sides, and then 3 screws that came with our Pioneer mount to the side pieces. And basically this is all good to go. It also comes with instructions, so if you need a little bit more detailed direction, go ahead and check those out. Metro provides that within this package. Okay, so at this time, we're done here at the bench. Let's head back to the car and go ahead and get this radio installed. All right, so the next step here, before we start getting the new radio back in the dash, we want to run the AUX and USB adapter to retain the AUX and USB inside the center console. I actually want to go ahead and remove this center console piece just temporarily because we need to insert our AUX and USB retention harness. So popping this out just temporarily allows us to gain access to that plug, and we can run that one cable up into the center console. Now back here behind the seat, on each side you're going to have these little covers that are going to expose the screws that we need to remove in order for the center console to come free. Okay, so with both sides removed, they're either Phillips or 10mm down at the base of the center console. The next thing we need to do is just go ahead and get a little tug on that little boot up and around your emergency lever. And there's going to be a screw right up underneath that. Little Phillips. And at that point, this actually should just kind of lift right on off. Now, like I said, we don't really need to fully remove it. We just need to get access to the aux port up underneath the center console. Now, with the center console just tipped up, the harness that we're going to need is this guy right there. So go ahead and disconnect this harness. So we went ahead and pressed the little tab and pulled that on out. Now our aux and USB adapter here, our aux adapter has the same exact plug. And what it's going to do is plug right into that same location, just like so. And then what we're going to do with this line is run this up the factory loom through the center console up into the dash cavity. All right, so we got our cord through, just so it stays out of the way of the parking brake cable as well as everything else. We're going to go ahead and zip tie it to the factory wiring. So before we button everything up here, we want to test everything, make sure it works once we get the radio in. I just hate for something not to work properly, but yeah, we've put everything back together. So at this point, let's tip this back on down and begin getting our harnesses all plugged into the factory plugs. So we have our harness adapter all ready to go. What this does, it just plugs right on in here. Now for this guy, this is your factory USB in the center console. The other adapter that came with our retention kit goes right there. That plugs on in as well. Now this is just another factory ground. It's not necessarily needed. And then this other plug, this is where the aux circuit ran through. But since we bypassed that circuit, that will no longer be plugged in. That'll just stay back behind the radio. Now the last thing we need to do is go ahead and tap in back behind the harness to hook up our steering wheel control wires here, because there's 3 wires that we need to tap into in order to retain that function, because they're not supplied in the wiring harness on the adapter side. So we're going to go ahead and cut back the covering up and over the wires. Do not cut the wires, but just give us enough space so we can access back behind the factory harness to tap in for that signal. Alright, so we started making our connections for our steering wheel controls. As you saw us do, we pulled back our shielding here just so we have enough space. And the 3 wires that we're looking for is this solid yellow. Solid yellow is pin number 14. We need blue with the yellow stripe, and that is pin 13. And then we need brown with a black stripe, which is just above it, and that's pin number 4. And we have that connected here. And so what we're going to do, like I've started here, putting a little bit of insulation over these connections. I've soldered onto these wires So for the yellow wire needs the iDatalink's black white wire. Blue yellow wire needs the iDatalink's pink red wire. The brown wire, the brown black wire, needs the iDatalink's purple red. So those three connections. Now I'll throw up here in front of the video here so you can see a little bit better how those connections connected to the wiring harness. That should help you a little bit more as you get everything soldered up. Now I suggest soldering or at least doing wire to wire. The reason why we wouldn't want to use those T-taps or anything like that is because it introduces resistance and you may not have the connection. They just may not work. So wire to wire is the best solution for steering wheel control connections. Okay, so we'll tape all this up, relume our harness so it looks all factory again, and begin getting the radio back in the dash. Okay, got everything all cleaned back up here. Got our connections good to go. At this point, let's go ahead and connect our radio. Okay, so let's go ahead and start making our connections here. Now the main wiring harness. Plug that on in. Our steering wheel control wire, that it goes in the WR input on the back of the radio. Now we have our little aux. We'll plug in our aux. We have our USB here. Let's plug our USB in as well. That has quite a bit of length, so we can push some back down. Now our antenna is a little bit short, so we'll probably plug that one in last. We have, if you have a mic or a radio that supports a mic and you've run it wherever you've chosen, make sure you plug that in as well. And then finally here, we're going to get our AM FM. Just like that. Okay. Lots of connections here, so we're going to just gently tuck everything back behind the dash. Okay, there we are. So at this point, it's probably appropriate to make sure we test everything.
You can also call the store for assistance or to schedule a shopping appointment.
Okay, perfect. Steering wheel controls, it's exactly what we wanted here. We'll test our USB port as well and make sure our aux port is also working. And at that point, once we verified everything's working, let's go ahead and put the screws in and start reassembling the dash. Make sure you plug in your hazard light. All right, it's looking really, really good. So we're going to go ahead at this time and start reassembling our center console because we know everything works. All right, that's about it for this install. If you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. Thanks again for watching. Hit that like button if you like what you saw. Be sure to subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.